Have you ever noticed how prices keep going up? For example, back in the year 2000, a burger price was around $2. But today, in 2024, that same burger may cost nearly $6. And it's not just food. Back in 2000, a movie ticket was around $5. Now, you could be paying more than $10 for watching a movie in the same theater. So what's going on? Why do prices keep increasing? Why don't they just stay the same? Are sellers raising prices together on purpose? Actually, there's one big reason for this: inflation. You've probably heard this word before, but do you really know what it means? Why does inflation happen? And is it always a bad thing? In this video, we're going to break down what inflation is and how it works. Section 1. What is inflation? Inflation is actually pretty simple. It's when the prices of things go up over time, which also makes the value of money go down. That's why things like a burger or anything else you buy cost more now than they did a few years ago. When inflation happens, your money cannot buy as much as it used to. For example, in the 1970s, the average price of a cup of coffee was only around 25 cents. But now, in 2024, if you want to buy a cup of coffee with those same 25 cents, you'd probably just get an empty cup, but with no coffee. So the coffee prices are going up, and the value of money is going down, making everything seem more expensive. But why does this happen? Well, that's what we'll talk about next. Section 2. Why does inflation happen? Inflation can happen for different reasons, but we'll talk about the most common ones. The first one is the demand pull inflation. This happens when a lot of people want to buy something, but there isn't enough of it. Let's take corn as an example. Imagine people usually want to buy 10 tons of corn, and farmers produce exactly 10 tons. Everything works fine, but then a tornado destroys most of the corn crops, leaving only 3. Imagine a popcorn seller sells popcorn for $3, but the same tornado that destroyed the corn farm means the popcorn seller now has to pay more for corn. So one bag of popcorn normally costs $1 of corn, $1 of other cost, and $1 profit, making the total price $3. But because of the tornado, the cost of corn goes up to $2, while other production costs stay the same. This means that the popcorn seller made no profit if he doesn't raise the price. So the popcorn seller has to raise the price of popcorn, maybe to $4, so he can still get $1 profit. This is cost push inflation, when the cost of making stuff pushes the prices up. The third one is built-in inflation. This happens when rising prices make the cost of living go up, and workers ask for higher wages to keep up. For example, let's say a shoe company worker's average cost of living is $900 a month, and they earn $1,000 a month. They can cover their expenses and still have a bit left over. But if prices rise and their average cost of living jumps to $1,000, they won't have any money left to save. In some cases, the cost of living can even rise higher than their salary. So they ask their boss for a pay raise. If the shoe company raises wages to $1,200, it helps the workers. But now the shoe company has higher costs of production. So they raise their shoe prices to maintain the profit. So higher product costs lead to higher wages to cover living costs, which then lead to even higher product prices as companies try to keep their profits. And this becomes a cycle that keeps going. The fourth one is too much money in the economy. When there's too much money in the economy, prices can rise. Imagine a loaf of bread costs $5, and there are 5 people, each with $5. With only 5 loaves available, each person buys one. That's great. But if the government gives everyone an extra $5, now each person has $10. With more money, people naturally want to buy more. Now, each person wants 2 loaves, but there are still only 5. The bakery sees this and raises the price to $10 because people are willing to pay more. In the end, each person still buys just one loaf, but now it costs $10. This isn't because the bread is worth more, but because there's more money around, it caused the value of money to decrease. This is like demand-pull inflation, which we just talked about. The bakery, which first makes more money, now faces higher costs too, as they compete with other bakeries for wheat. Wheat prices go up, so the bakery has to raise bread prices again to keep up. This is like cost-push inflation, which we also just talked about. For a real-life example, Zimbabwe, Venezuela, and Weimar Germany had done that. For more on this, check out my video, Why Can't We Just Print More Money? Link in the description. So these are some main common factors and reasons that caused inflation. Now you might ask, how to know how high is the inflation? Well, that's what we will talk about in Section 3. Section 3. How is inflation measured? You've probably heard people talk about the inflation rate, which is something governments mention often. And if inflation gets too high, it can hurt the economy. But how is this inflation rate measured? How do governments or institutions calculate it? There are different ways to measure inflation, but the most common way is by using something called the Consumer Price Index, or CPI. So what is the Consumer Price Index? It's a way to track how the prices of everyday goods and services change over time. For example, in 2024, let's say the price of bread is $3, milk is $4, eggs are $5, a candle is $8, and a movie ticket is $10. The total for all these items is $30. Then, in 2025, the price of bread rises to $3.30, milk to $4.20, eggs to $5.30, a candle to $8.10, and the movie ticket is still $10. The new total is around $30.90. Comparing 2024 to 2025, the prices have increased by 3%, so the CPI for that year is 3%. This means that on average, prices have risen by 3% from 2024 to 2025. Of course, in reality, the CPI calculation is more complex and includes many more items, but this is a simple way to understand it. But here's something important. A low CPI does not always mean prices are rising slowly. Why? As we see here, the prices for essential items that you need every day, like bread, milk, and eggs, go up significantly. Bread by 10%, milk by 5%, and eggs by 6%. Meanwhile, less essential items that you could live without, like candles, only increase by 1.25%, and movie tickets don't go up at all. So even if the CPI shows a small increase, people might still feel like things are getting expensive, because the items they really need are the ones that are rising in price. The CPI is just an overall rough average, not a specific reflection of essential costs.
My biggest concern when I was thinking of getting Botox Cosmetic was
losing my expression. I wanted to stay hobby and stay me.
The doctor did great at explaining.
Section 4. Is inflation bad? If inflation makes things more expensive and lowers the value of money, shouldn't we aim for 0% or even minus inflation to make everything cheaper? Well, that might seem logical, but in the long run, it's not healthy for the economy. Let's see the reasons. The first reason is that small inflation is good for growth. So central banks usually aim for around 2 to 3% inflation per year. It's like their magic number. Why? Because small inflation encourages people to spend money rather than just save it. If people know that prices will slowly increase, they're more likely to buy now rather than wait. When people spend, businesses grow, jobs are created, and the economy stays strong. Imagine if you're trying to sell ice cream, but nobody wants to buy it. That's obviously bad for business. The second reason is minus inflation is dangerous. If the inflation rate drops below 0, which means minus inflation, it means prices are actually going down, and that's called deflation. While deflation might sound good because things get cheaper, it also means companies may have to cut wages to maintain profits. This leads to a situation where everything is cheaper, but no one has enough money to buy anything. One example of this was the Great Depression in the US during the 1930s, which was caused by massive deflation. So while deflation might sound good, it was actually behind one of the worst economic disasters in history. Well, I'll explain more about deflation in the next video. I mean, really, the next video after this inflation video, I promise. The third reason is hyperinflation is a nightmare. If small inflation is good for growth, too low or minus inflation is bad, then too much inflation is also bad. If inflation gets out of control, which is called hyperinflation, prices can skyrocket very quickly. Hyperinflation is when average prices increase by more than 50% every month. Imagine in January 2025, the price of a loaf of bread is $3. Then, in February, the price is already $4.05. Well, it's just a $1.50 increase. But if the inflation still goes until next year, in January 2026, the price is already $389 for the same bread. One famous case of hyperinflation happened in Venezuela due to their crazy money printing, which makes the Venezuelan currency losing its value and causing prices to increase even every hour. Venezuelans even threw their money on the street because it was worthless and couldn't buy anything. Section 5. How to control inflation. Since too much inflation is bad and minus inflation isn't good either, how can we keep inflation stable? Well, both the central bank and the government are responsible for controlling inflation. Yeah, they both do different things. The central bank will take monetary policy, while the government will take fiscal policy. So what are their policies then? To control inflation, central banks like the Federal Reserve or the European Central Bank use monetary policy. Monetary policy is just a fancy term for the decisions they make to adjust interest rates and manage the money supply. Now, what kind of monetary policies does the central bank take? The first one is adjusting interest rates. So what is the interest rate? Interest rates are the cost of borrowing money in percentages. If you borrow $1,000 at a 10% interest rate, you have to pay back $1,000 plus an extra $100 as interest. Inflation down. However, central banks cannot keep interest rates too high for too long because it makes borrowing harder, which means people can't have money and nobody can buy or sell things, which will slow down the economy. So they need to carefully balance raising and lowering interest rates based on the country's economic situation.
Nespresso.
Amazon last-minute deals are here. Save on toys, electronics, and more. Shop last-minute deals now on Amazon.
The second one is controlling the money supply. Too much money in the economy will cause higher inflation, while too little money causes deflation. So central banks also can control this through a method called open market operation. But how does open market operation work? So when there's too little money in the economy, the central bank will increase money supply in the economy by doing expansionary open market operation. This means the central bank will buy treasuries like government bonds from commercial banks. For example, common banks that you use like Bank of America, HSBC, SBI, and more. These commercial banks mostly already owned government bonds, and then they resell them to the central bank for higher prices. The central bank buys with higher price to inject money into the economy. As these banks get more money from the central bank, this will lead for the banks will lower their interest rate to lure people to borrow money from them. This will lead to more money in the economy, so the inflation rate can increase. But now, if the inflation rate is too high, which means too much money in the economy, the central bank will do the opposite, which is the contractionary open market operation. This means the central bank will resell treasuries like government bonds back to commercial banks. As banks buy the government bonds from the central bank, it means commercial banks will have less money and will lend less money. As banks don't want to lend too much money, they will raise the interest rate too. This results in less people borrowing money and less money in the economy, which will bring down the inflation rate. So, in open market operation, buying and selling treasuries are the ways the central bank used to inject money into the economy or to retract money from the economy. While the central bank takes monetary policy, the government can take the fiscal policy to control inflation. Fiscal policy is also just a fancy term of decisions taken by the government, like adjusting taxes or spending. So here's some of their policies. The first one is adjusting taxes. Well, when people have too much money, people will spend more, and that will lead to demand pull inflation. So the government might raise taxes to reduce the money you have for spending. In that case, you will have less money, and it will lower your spending, and then inflation will decrease. While contrary, if the money is too little in the economy, or if the inflation is too low, the government will reduce taxes so you can keep more money and can spend and buy more things. Even though the government mostly will just raise taxes and they will very rarely ever decrease it. Yeah, and the government comes and buys tons of things from your store as the government wants to build a new bridge in your city. Well, the government not only buys things from your store, but also needs to hire an engineer who will design and control the construction, the workers who will build the bridge, and more. So it means you, as the owner of the construction stores, and these engineers and workers get more money from this bridge project. As you and other workers have more money, you will spend more money, and this will lead to higher inflation. But what if the government stops doing that for a while? You won't get orders from the government, and these engineers and workers also are not getting paid. So you and other workers get less money, and you will lower your spending. You might say one bridge can't influence the whole economy, but remember,
for the ones who know safety isn't a catchphrase, it's a culture, and the ones who help make sure everyone makes it home safe. For the safety-minded who watch everyone's backs, Granger offers supplies and
there are tons of government projects across money.
After last month's massive solar flare added a 25th hour to the day, businesses are wondering, what should we do with it?
Bacon and eggs, 25/7.
You're darn right.
Solar stocks are up 20% with the additional hour in the day.
Ruined.
With the extra hour, I'm thinking company-wide power now.
Let's put it to a vote.
This is going to wreak havoc on overtime.
And you will lower your spending. You might say one bridge can't influence the whole economy, but remember, there are tons of government projects across the country and involving thousands of construction store owners, thousands of engineers, and hundreds of thousands of workers across the country. The projects are also worth millions to even billions of dollars. So if the government lowers their spending, it will impact a lot on money supply. Section 6. How to protect yourself from inflation. You might have heard your parents or grandparents say, save your money in a piggy bank. While saving is generally a good habit, inflation can make your money lose value over time. Let's say you saved $1,000 in your piggy bank in 2014. In 2014, that $1,000 could buy a certain amount of goods. But by 2024, because of inflation, that same $1,000 might not be worth as much as it did 10 years ago. So how do you protect your money from losing value because of inflation? The answer is simple: investing. Many people suggest buying gold to protect against inflation. Since gold has a limited supply and high demand, especially as many people, including you, want gold, it becomes even more valuable when inflation rises. People trust gold to keep their wealth stable during inflation. However, for some people, gold's price doesn't go up fast enough as stocks. So they prefer higher yield investments like stocks, cryptocurrencies, real estate, or other investment tools. For example, if you invest in something, you want to pay attention to the return on investment, or how much percentage your investment has increased. Let's say in 2014, there's 3 people named Bob, Jack, and Tony. Bob invested $1,000 in Apple stocks. Jack invested $1,000 in gold, while Tony saved the $1,000 in the savings account. In 2024, or 10 years later, Bob already made $9,000 with an average 25% return per year. Jack made about $1,800 with an average 6% return per year. And Tony still has the same $1,104 with an average of 1% deposit interest per year. But don't forget, we need to subtract the inflation rate from that return to know the real value of investment. If the inflation rate is 2% per year, then Bob's actual return is about 23% per year, which still at $8,000 means he profits $7,000. While Jack's actual return is about 4% per year, which is still around $1,500, means he still profits around $500. While Tony's actual return after inflation is -1%, as savings account interest rate cannot beat the 2% inflation. So Tony's actual money is around $900. It means his money already lost $100 of its value. Wait, hold on. You'll ask, what happened to Tony? Well, as the average inflation rate is about 2% per year, then $1,000 in 2014 is actually equal to around $1,200 in 2024. So even though Tony has $1,100, it can only buy what $900 could buy in 2014. So it means Tony's money in regular savings account is losing 1% of its value every year. So in conclusion, inflation is actually a natural part of the economy, driven by various factors from unexpected events, government or central bank policies, or even some theory that big companies are increasing prices for more profit. Since we couldn't avoid inflation, understanding how inflation works and how to protect yourself from it through smart investments and staying aware of how your money is growing can help you stay ahead. And if you want to invest your money to beat inflation, make sure to learn as much as you can. Don't invest or throw your money into something you don't know and understand. And as promised, the next video will be about deflation. If you want me to make other videos explaining these topics, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.
USDC is money with all the benefits of the open internet. So it moves fast, across borders, and is accessible by anyone. USDC is the digital dollar made for businesses everywhere.
You know what you don't see in psoriasis commercials? Cut! The thousands of real people who go undiagnosed. People whose psoriasis can look very different depending on their skin tone. As the makers of Tremfya, we understand that everybody's moderate to severe plaque psoriasis doesn't look the same. So we undertook a first-of-its-kind study of plaque psoriasis in every skin tone. Like hers, and his, and yours.
Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and TB. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine.
Ask your dermatologist about Tremfya.
Hello class, your homework assignment, as the US states that you are, was to make your state flag. A flag to stir pride in your citizens. A flag to stand proud on the American stage. A tough task, though not too tough with the guidelines I gave you upon which you will be graded. 1. Keep it simple, something a child could draw. If they need to simplify it again, good enough. 2. Make it distinct at a distance. A flag is not a poster, it's not wallpaper, it's not a patch, it's not money or anything else looked at up close. No tiny details, it's a flag. It'll be flying from afar among other flags, and when the wind stops, you still need to be able to spot yours. 3. Colors or fewer, unless you really know what you're doing, but if you think you do, you probably don't. 4. Symbols, have them. Your colors and what you design with them should mean something. It should say something about your citizens. 5. Words on a flag. The ideal number is 0. It's a flag, not a note that you're passing in class. Thank you, I'll take that. If you violated this rule, I hope you hid those words in a design because you will be marked down. And there is one thing you were absolutely forbidden from writing, because a flag is not a name tag. If you wrote your name on your flag fails as a flag. No exceptions. All right, let's just get a quick look and see how everybody did. Hold up your flags, please. All right, because you're all so internet to keep your attention, you're getting put on a tier list from S to F. S for super, F for you guessed it, you failed. And I can see that so many of you did already. The F tier is going to be absolutely bursting, so we're going to break it down into a tier list inside a tier list, S to F for the F tier. All right, let's just get the worst out of the way. Kansas, Montana, Wisconsin, Oregon, that's you. I'm sorry, get up here. You guys and so many of your classmates went with this basic template, seal on blue, that all you bluebells, by copying each other, have each made each other so much worse in the distinct at a distance department. And you four, you started with seals in the center, which is already subpar, but signing that seal, so much sorrier. And Montana, this kerning, my eyes can only take so much. Wisconsin, unironically, a cheese-based flag would have been better. Do that. And, oh, an objection from Oregon. You have a different design on the back, and this is so much better. I'm gonna give it a pass. You should just ditch the front of your flag and be all in on the beaver. Hey, I wouldn't be laughing, California. It's your turn up here now, and I know you think your flag is awesome, but you seem to have scrawled California across it. And don't think bragging about the Republic is going to help your grade. I know all about that phase as an independent country that lasted, what was it again? Oh right, barely 3 weeks. Rather a shorter time than some other nation states I could mention. And about your bear, look at him. Really look, California. That's a scared bear. Why did you draw him that way? This is A tier, but F tier. Hey, are you crying? There's no crying in flag design. There's just doing better, which you easily can. Next, Dakota Sisters, you're up, and you've both written your names, so instant fail. But North, your seal is at least better drawn, so D tier, F tier, and South, you've picked a brighter blue, which is a bit distinct, so I'll put you on tier with your sister. But wait, did you write your name on the flag twice? F tier twice then. But suggestion, Dakotas, you both obviously like this spiky design element, so maybe you could do a cool North-South sister states thing with that. You know, bring some of that Greenland, Antarctica energy to the states. Now, all of you listen up. Today is not the final day of your judgment. Better is always an option. Take Miss Mississippi. She started with this flag, but recently felt it didn't fit her, and so transitioned to this one. Yes, she added words, which I will mark her down for, but they're hidden as hitty. And let her serve as a model of achievable improvement for everyone who fails today, especially California. Thank you, Miss Mississippi.
Come with me to my Botox Cosmetic appointment. I've been getting treated with Botox Cosmetic for about 8 years to smooth the look of my moderate to severe forehead lines, frown lines, and my crow's feet. It's a quick 10 to 15 minute treatment every 3 to 4 months that leaves me looking like myself, just with
Sippy. You can sit down now. Next up, Nebraska. At least you didn't write your name real big on the bottom. FD. Vermont. Not terrible for F tier, obviously. Best looking seal so far, I guess. C tier. Maine. You wrote your name real big, but in a classy way. I can't believe you girls are even making me have to compare seal designs so closely. F tier, C tier. Ugh, I'm getting blue blinded. Can someone help me out here? New Mexico. What vexillological virtuosity is this? A design in the center so simple and sacred of the Zia people, done with bold colors that match the New Mexican landscape itself. It's enchanting. Need I even say the words, New Mexico? S tier. Thank you for giving me hope. Okay, back to the bluebells. New Hampshire, seal on blue, but you did kind of go all in on the seal, and the ship is pretty good. I didn't think I needed a rule to say that a flag is not a painting of other flags, but here you are with 3. FB. Connecticut. Fan of the grapes, huh, kid? Nah, I'm good, thanks. Purple is objectively the worst color, but you know what? You could do something with that, and it would stand out. In the meantime, FD. Enjoy your grapes. Michigan. Circumspice? I will, and all I see is more boring blue. FD. Can anyone do blue but good? Ah, Alaska. Look at this, ladies. The northernest state showing off the northernest star in an open blue sky. And she didn't feel the need to write Alaska across it, which must have been pretty tempting. California? And even better, the companion constellation of the Big Dipper is but the tail of Ursa Major, a great bear in the sky, the animal most associated with this state and important to the Alaska natives. How clever, Alaska! I simply must give you the Best Bear Award. This flag is pretty top tier, but the low contrast design with the sparse stars does make it difficult to differentiate at a distance, especially in, say, dark winters. And it breaks my brain that your official vertical orientation is for the North Star to be at the bottom. North Star, top star. Look, this is an amazing patch, which I think comes pre-installed on every backpack in Alaska, so your citizens obviously love it. It's a good flag, it's the best bear, best in B tier. Oh, sorry, Miss Missouri, I didn't see you've also got a bear. 2 bears? No, wait, there's a bear on the seal the bears are holding? You definitely win most bears, darling, and most stars with, wow, 61. 13 for the original 13 states on the American seal, which you put inside your seal for sealception, then 24 stars for your entry as the 24th state twice. It's very busy, and you put all those bears and stars and words atop a tricolor, the most basic of all flag designs, but blessed be you didn't write your name, so I'm passing you. D tier. Anyone else who didn't write their name? Ah, Rhode Island. You wrote Hope, but I'll take it at this point. This is also quite the square, but I guess you're going all in on the sailing motif with the anchors and the colors, and it works. C tier. On to the Commonwealth Club. No more hiding in the back. It's your turn. Commonwealth of Massachusetts. At least it's not blue, and it's sort of simple. In comparison, of course, FC. Kentucky, I know you like being in the Commonwealth Club, but you can't write it on your flag. Well, you can, but you're getting F tier, D tier for that. Pennsylvania. If you're going to do seal on blue, this is pretty good. And you didn't write Commonwealth of Pennsylvania anywhere. F tier, B tier. And come on up, Captain of the Club, Commonwealth of Virginia. Let's see what you've done. Oh God, are you trying to get me demonetized? Your flag has nudity, murder, and an explicit call to violence. But you know what, Virginia?
Watch my video about inflation. You will say that inflation is bad because it makes everything expensive. Prices rise, the value of money drops, and if inflation is too high, everything is in chaos. So you might be wondering, if high inflation means prices will go up, then logically, wouldn't minus inflation make prices go down? So minus inflation sounds like a great thing. Why don't all countries do that? Well, that condition is called deflation. And even though deflation does make everything cheaper, it's not necessarily better than inflation. Why? Well, in this video, we will talk about what deflation is, how it works, and why it can be just as bad or even worse than inflation. Section 1. What is deflation? Deflation is when prices go down and money's value goes up. Simply put, deflation is just the opposite of inflation. Something that you need to know is that deflation is different from disinflation. Disinflation means inflation is going down. For example, if inflation was 2%, then it went down to 1%, it means that the economy still has inflation, but it's less. While deflation means minus inflation. For example, -1 inflation is 1% deflation, and so on. So if inflation makes prices more expensive, then deflation makes prices cheaper. Not only that, while inflation makes the value of money go down, deflation makes the value of money go up. For example, if $3 used to buy you just one burger, after deflation, that same $3 can buy you the same burger and a drink. This means the price of the burger went down and your money's value went up. With the same amount of money, you can now buy not only a burger, but also a drink. Your money just became more powerful and valuable. Sounds amazing, right? Well, it's not that simple. To understand why, we need to know what causes deflation and its impacts. Section 2. Why does deflation happen? As deflation is just the opposite of inflation, the causes of deflation are mostly also just the opposite of the causes of inflation. Deflation can happen for different reasons, but we'll talk about the most common ones. The first cause is a decrease in money supply. You probably know that if there's too much money in the economy, it leads to inflation, making prices go up. So what happens if there's too little money? Of course, it causes the opposite, deflation. But how does money supply decrease? This usually happens after a major crisis. For example, during the 2008 financial crisis, many people who had loans from banks went bankrupt and couldn't repay their debts. To protect themselves, banks stopped lending money. As people could not borrow money, they had less money. When people had less money, they naturally reduced their spending, which led them to buy fewer goods and services. This decrease in spending causes a drop in demand, which we'll discuss in the next point. The second cause is decrease in demand. Imagine that you're a baker who has a bakery that sells bread. A loaf of bread costs $5. Now, let's say every day you can sell about 10 loaves of bread to your customers. Well, that's great. As mentioned earlier, the decrease in the money supply means most people have less money. When people have less money, they will lower their spending and save their money. So the impact is now you can only sell 5 loaves of bread per day instead of 10. You notice that demand continues to fall, and you fear your bread won't sell, causing it to go stale. Not only you, but all businesses are worried about unsold products piling up. So all businesses, including yours, will naturally lower their prices to attract buyers. As people cannot afford to buy anything, businesses are forced to lower prices to attract buyers, leading to massive price decreases. That's deflation. The third cause is increasing in supply. Continuing from the previous example, because demand has dropped and bakeries decrease their production, there's less competition among bakeries to buy wheat. For suppliers, like wheat farmers, this leads to an oversupply problem. If there are normally 6 bakeries, each buying 2 bags of wheat, a total of 12 bags, and the wheat farmers produce 12 bags, then there's no problem. But as deflation hits, let's say 2 bakeries cannot survive and go out of business, leaving only 4 bakeries left. As the demand keeps falling, these 4 bakeries reduce their orders from 2 bags to perhaps 1 bag, so the total demand is now 4 bags of wheat. While the wheat farmers still produce 12 bags of wheat, this means there's 8 bags of unsold wheat. To avoid letting their wheat go to waste, farmers lower their prices further and decrease their production to match demand. With cheaper wheat, it costs you less to bake bread. However, since demand remains low, you have to continue lowering prices to attract buyers, meaning the bakery does not generate more profit. So in this scenario, the wheat price falls, the bread price drops, and all the prices are falling. At the same time, production is also decreasing. So the economy just keeps shrinking, and that causes recession. So those are common reasons why deflation can happen. Of course, there are many other factors that can cause deflation, but for this video, I will keep it simple. Now, let's move on to the next section. Section 3. Is deflation bad? In my previous inflation video, I explained that low inflation is actually good for the economy. Similarly, low deflation can also be good for the economy, as it helps lower prices and make things more affordable. However, just as too much inflation is bad for the economy, too much deflation can be even worse than inflation. The Great Depression of the 1930s in the US, which is regarded as one of the worst financial crises in history,
So what is money and how does it get value? Paper money has value because someone says so. Bitcoin is different. It's like digital gold. It has value for many of the reasons gold does, but that's only the start. It has a limited supply, only 21 million, so no one can decide to just print more. Because no central authority controls it, it can never be shut down. And unlike with banks and credit card companies, you don't need approval to use it. It puts the power back in all our hands. Bitcoin lets you control your finances. Kraken lets you buy Bitcoin.
Was caused by massive deflation. Wait, how can falling prices and the rising value of money cause a crisis? Let's break it down with an example. Imagine you work at a shoe factory. Before deflation, your factory was producing and selling shoes at $60 a pair. The factory makes 1,000 pairs of shoes every day, and everything is going smoothly. But then, deflation hits, and prices for everything start to fall. The factory notices a drop in shoe demand as well. Before, they could sell all 1,000 pairs of shoes, but now they're only selling about 800 pairs a day. The factory owner, seeing the falling demand, decides to cut prices to attract more customers. So the price of shoes drops from $60 to $55. But people aren't rushing to buy. They think, why buy now? The price will probably fall even more. I'll just wait until they're cheaper. Also, during deflation, the media will report that the economy is struggling, which leads people to save their money out of fear. So the factory lowers the price again to $50. Sales increase slightly, but still not enough. They keep cutting the price to $45, $40, and even lower, but customers still hold off. Now, you might say, this isn't a problem, since the materials for the shoes, like rubber, are also seeing a drop in demand and price. And you're right, the rubber company that supplies your factory faces less demand, and its rubber stock is piling up. So the rubber company cuts its prices to attract shoe companies to buy. With this, your shoe factory can keep producing shoes at a lower cost and still sell them at a lower price, helping to maintain some profit. But remember, the rubber company cannot lower the price of rubber forever. There's a limit because the rubber company still needs money to extract the rubber from trees and pay the workers. Eventually, when the rubber company reaches the lowest price they can sell at, and no one wants to buy your factory's shoes, your factory can no longer lower its prices. The factory still has to pay workers' wages, production costs, electricity, and other expenses. So the factory is forced to lay off workers, forego profits, and cut production from 1,000 pairs of shoes per day to 700 or fewer. At this point, your country enters a recession. A recession occurs when businesses cut production, causing the GDP to shrink for over 6 months. So in this situation, let's say you're lucky not to be laid off, but your boss cuts your wages to keep the factory in business. However, if deflation gets really bad and turns into spiral deflation, the situation worsens. Spiral deflation occurs when businesses continue to collapse, resulting in widespread job losses and even less money circulating in the economy. The rubber company that supplies your shoe factory goes bankrupt too. Now, your factory is trying to survive by laying off workers, cutting wages, and reducing production to 500, 300, or even just 100 pairs of shoes per day. But eventually, the factory gives up and goes bankrupt. Now, you've lost your job and income. You try to find another job, but all businesses are collapsing, laying off workers, and there are simply no vacancies. So you're left in a situation where everything is cheap, but nobody has money to buy anything. This is the danger of deflation. It can cause a cycle where lower prices lead to lower wages, fewer jobs, and lower demand, which will cause recession. And if it continues to even lower prices, the economy spirals downward into depression. Depression is when the recession got so bad, and that's why too much deflation is actually a nightmare. Since you don't want too much deflation, how can it be controlled? Well, that's what we'll talk about in the next section. Section 4. How to control deflation. Since too much and too long deflation is not good for the economy, how can deflation be controlled? Well, in the previous inflation video, we've talked about how the central bank and the government control high inflation and low inflation. So the central bank and the government will use similar methods to control deflation as they do to control low inflation.
Machine learning is advancing, but businesses wonder if some machines can keep up.
Let's welcome our new coworker, Jeff.
As deflation means too little money in the economy, the central bank will use the monetary policy while the government will use the fiscal policy to inject more money into the economy and combat deflation. The central bank can control deflation